Hey everyone, Grayson here. So tonight's going to be my first night doing an after show for modern day debate. So we'll see how that goes. The debate tonight was between Trock and Dr. Chris Thompson. Trock is someone who I will be debating here soon, coming up in February. We have a debate scheduled on Standing for Truth's channel about the age of the Earth. So I thought, tonight I might as well see what his arguments that he's going to bring forward to the table, and it was pretty hilarious, I have to say. So I know that he's a little bit more on the ball with the age of the Earth and geology and radiometric dating stuff than he is generally with evolution, but it was still pretty laughable to hear some of the things that he was saying tonight on modern day debate. So this after show is open for everyone that wants to join. I've laid out down the gauntlet for some creationists to join, especially Bubblegum Gun was very active in the chat tonight at the modern day debates. He loves discussing evolution and thinks that he's debunked it. Additionally, there's actually an atheist that wanted to talk about the Cambrian Explosion, who said that they might join the stream. So we'll see if any of them actually have the cojones to join up. The link has been pinned in the chat for anyone that is interested. And it should be pretty funny if if Bubblegum joins, it will be funny. The other guy, he seemed like a nice enough chap. He just didn't really seem to understand the law of monophyly or what exactly phylum were. So I was hoping that, I could help clear that up because he is an atheist. He doesn't believe in young Earth creation. So I thought it was a very strange type of person to meet. But the debate tonight was overall pretty good on modern day debates. I thought Dr. Chris Thompson did a very good job rebutting Trock and kind of making him admit some of his more foolish gaps in reasoning. Like he had to admit that all of the mutations that came since Noah's flood were like the result of food and diet and habitat. And he was trying to make the argument that chemicals that are present in muddy water are mutagenic agents, and they cause mutations in your DNA, and they come in direct contact with your DNA, which was pretty hilarious, all things considered. I really can't believe some of the things that um, that he was saying. I see Bubblegum in the comments. Um, I won't. I won't be running from you, so you feel free to hop in and join the discussion here. Try to start with from ground zero, and not just start in the middle of a of a larger debate like some of our previous interactions. Um, if I can figure out how to share the screen here, then I can actually show the actual study that I will be going through and showing the dog transitions that he's asking for that lead to the Dalmatian. The study, for anyone that's curious, the study is called "The Ancient European Dog Genomes Reveal Continuity Since the Early Neolithic." So they've actually, found the specimens, tested the ancient DNA samples from these early Neolithic dogs from thousands of years ago, and then they compared them to modern dog species like Dalmatians and saw that there was a direct continuity there. So here's Bubblegum now joining the stream. Hey, Bubblegum, how are you? Have you been blue balls after nobody lets you join in on the debates tonight? I know that you were trying to have a one-on-one debate, both with in the modern day debate format and the after show. So hopefully now you can finally get that out of your system. If you're talking, you
Oh, you
have
can't hear me. My bad.
yeah, you've been
Sorry.
muted.
Oh yeah, he totally ran from me. Yeah, it's
Okay,
how
well, let's not try to get into that. What were you actually trying
well,
to
he
talk
did.
about? Or what were you trying to
Uh,
talk about?
well, I was gonna ask the same question you did because I know you can't answer it. It's unanswerable. At least Atheist Junior
Could you
is
just,
honest.
for the sake of the audience that maybe wasn't listening, could you say what the question is?
Oh yeah, here, have a. I have a picture where I have it written down. Basically, the argument is name me one single intermediate between the gray wolf and the Dalmatian dog.
Yeah, okay. And I have sent you this study before, so you're aware of the
Yeah.
study that I wanted to talk to you, right?
Yeah, and then in the study, they give no transitionals.
Well, they are directly testing the DNA of the transitionals, whether or not
No,
they
they are
name
not.
them.
They have no transitionals to test. They even say that in that study. Like, this is a bit concerning to them. And it's only mentioned like in one like sentence, but it is mentioned like there is some sort of concern to them that there are no transitionals, which is not as weird. And they just move on from that. They're like, yeah, whatever, evolution is true.
Okay, well, I just did a F4 search on this study for concern, and it's never mentioned anywhere in the study. So maybe worry.
It is. I can.
Never brought up.
I mean, I can look through it again and send you like a clip of it. Of what I'm talking about.
Well, you never have responded to this study, which clearly, like, these specimens that they're testing are the transitions that you've been asking for.
No, they are not testing any transitionals.
The DNA clearly shows them to be transitionals.
They don't. They don't have any transitionals. They're just inferring.
The study literally is of exactly what you're asking for.
Okay, so, okay, give me the name of the transitional.
You want a string of letters and numbers? That's how they name their specimen.
Dude, you know strings and letters are just abstractions, which means they don't have transitionals.
All names are just abstractions. That's a nonsense.
No, they're not. Okay, dude. When we give a name to a specimen, it's because they actually existed. What you are talking about, it's just like, well, there must be a transitional here. We don't have it, so we'll just put a number.
The DNA literally shows that it is a transitional.
They don't. They don't have
DNA.
They don't have a transitional, dude. They just have an abstract number.
No, they have the actual genetic sequence. Why don't you get that?
They don't have a transitional. They're just inferring from the other animals that there must be a transitional. Like, well, this is how this transition must have been.
Okay, so what do you think that they're actually measuring whenever they dig up these specimens of these ancient dogs?
They don't have any specimens of transitionals.
Okay, so then what are they measuring the DNA of?
They are testing DNA for like extinct dogs. So yeah, they are extinct dogs, but none of those extinct dogs are transitionals.
So then why does the DNA of those extinct dogs clearly is ancestral of modern European breeds? Like the genetic analysis shows this.
Dude, we have, because some of those dogs are some of the dogs are fossilized, they're actually still alive. For example, the Chihuahua. Even though the Chihuahua isn't a pure breed, the Chichichi, which is the pure breed of the Chihuahua, is in the fossil record, quote unquote fossil record.
Okay, in the study, they were talking about European ancient breeds. The Chihuahua was not a part of the study.
I know, dude. Okay, this is just an example.
Okay, well, I mean, the example is clearly from the study that we're talking about. The genes show that it's a transitional between a wolf and modern breeds of dogs.
They're not transitionals. They don't have any transitionals at all.
Then why is it that their genomes are between modern breeds and wolves? That's the definition of a transitional.
No, dude. They have numbers assigned to them because they're inferring that there must be a transitional.
No, because you can't just the genetic sequence literally like shows this to be the case. It's not just like they're arbitrarily putting.
Okay, you have to. They have to extract that DNA from an actual specimen, correct? They can't just pull it out of nowhere.
It was an actual specimen that they.
Okay, tell me the name of the transitional specimen from which they extracted this DNA from.
Here, I'm trying to share my screen right now. Let me know.
At least be honest, like Atheist Junior. Okay, sorry, I gotta be back.
I'm trying to do the technical aspect here so I can show. People are asking for the study here, and I'm trying to show it on the screen, but I am kind of a noob with StreamYard, so I don't exactly know how to. Oh, here we go. Okay, now let me see if you are able to. Can you see what I'm looking at? No.
Wait, I had to step away for a second.
Okay. Let me try to share my screen here.
I mean, at least be honest, like Atheist Junior. He admitted there isn't. You can't answer the question.
I
That's how
literally
made the
am
question.
showing you the study that shows it. Okay, for everyone
No,
asking, because I can't figure out how to share the screen. Sorry, I apologize for my technology noobness here. The name of the study is Ancient European Dog Genomes Reveal Continuity Since the Early Neolithic. And they are literally going and finding ancient dogs. They are sampling their DNA and they are showing 100% proof they are transitional. The DNA shows this. It's 100% demonstrably like evident.
no, they're not. They're inferring they're transitional. They're
So
inferring
then
the
why is the
transitions.
DNA, right? Why is the DNA between the modern breeds and wolves? Why would that be the case?
They
Is it a
don't have.
coincidence?
No, they're just assigning numbers in between as transitionals. They don't have
No,
any
no, no.
actual specimens to
There's
extract
no
DNA from.
arbitrary assignment of any numbers. This is literally just the data of when they take the DNA and they sequence
Okay,
it.
if it's
This is
not
what they
just
get.
if it's not just arbitrary numbers, give me the name of the specimen from which they extracted this DNA from.
All right, I will go through the study here and I'll get you the name of their specimen because they used multiple specimens.
And it better be a transitional.
It is a transitional. The DNA clearly shows that it is a transitional species because, again, whenever you plot the total DNA sequence and you compare it to both modern breeds of dogs and wolves, the DNA falls in between them. That's the definition of what makes it a
Dude, yeah.
transitional.
You know what? The DNA from a dingo falls in between a dog and a wolf. Does that mean a dingo is a transitional between a dog and a wolf?
No, the DNA of a dingo
Clearly
does
not,
not fall
right?
in between.
So that's fallacious. That's fallacious reasoning.
I don't think that you heard what I just said.
I did, and I just gave you an example why that's fallacious reasoning.
I just said a dingo's DNA does not fall between a modern breed and a wolf.
No, it does. It does fall.
It does not.
They do consider it an in between. If you look it up.
Okay, so their specimens that they used are HXH, CTC, NGD, and the Karstein cave dog.
Karstein cave dog. Okay, let me look
Yes,
that one up.
the 12,500-year-old Karstein cave dog from Germany. So there's your transitional, okay? It was the ancestor of modern European breeds like the Dalmatian. I gave you a name. You're obsessed with names, so there's a name for you to chew on. Adam, welcome to the stream.
Hey, how's it going, Grayson?
Pretty
Thanks for having
well,
me on, man.
pretty well. Just going back and
Can you
forth.
type that? Can you type out that name for me? Can you type that name for me? Can you type out that name for me?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat here. It's the Karstein cave dog. There you go. There's your transitional. I hope you're happy. Now, Adam, I was curious about last night we were talking about the Cambrian Explosion and the origins of different phylum, and you were saying, why would all of these phylum be originated from the Cambrian, right?
Right, yeah, like, well, I don't think it's all right in the Cambrian. It's like a couple of them, like jellyfish and sponges, are like right before the Cambrian.
And bilaterians like us?
I don't think that is a phylum, but yes.
To my knowledge,
Grayson, big problem. You're not giving me the name of the breed. This is just
cave dog.
Yeah, that's just the place where they found this bone.
The Karstein cave dog is not a place.
That's not the name of an actual specimen.
The Karstein cave dog is.
Dude, Karstein cave is a cave. They found this dog in Karstein cave. You're not giving me the name.
The name of it is Karstein cave dog.
No.
Okay, check your email, Bubblegum, because I have emailed you this exact study before. You can go read it. You can do
I read it, and they have no transitionals.
It's literally the specimen that they were extracting DNA from and testing. I really don't know what you want at this point, because I've given you the name, I've given you the specimen, and I've given you the study where you can literally look at its genetic sequence.
Dude, they didn't. All they say that we found a dog in the Karstein cave. It's a puppy, but they don't mention which breed it is.
Yeah, because it's an ancient breed. It's not a modern breed.
Oh my god, dude. you know as well as I do, the evolution happens in populations. So you
Yeah.
should be able to tell me the breed name.
Yeah. Not literally every single population has been named by scientists. It's a member of an
That's how.
ancient
This is
breed.
how it works. You can't just say, "Well, we haven't named it. That's why it can't be named."
We literally have its genetic sequence. Why would we need to name it?
Because then we can find to which breed it belongs to.
It doesn't belong to any modern breed. That's the whole point. We have its genetics, and genetically, it's
It doesn't
different from any
have to be a
modern breed.
modern breed. It doesn't need to be a breed that's alive. It could be a breed that's extinct.
So what you're looking for is you want these scientists to have made up a name for the breed of these ancient specimens, and that's
Do
the
you
only thing
think
that's gonna
breed
make
names
you
are
happy.
made up? Wait, do you think
That's the
we
only thing
just
that's
like?
gonna make you happy, right? Is if they just make up a name
What-
for the breed.
Do you think we're just making up stuff?
I think you're just making up stuff. Yes,
Dude, we don't just make up freaking breed names. We get these.
we literally do. That's like these are like the names of breeds are made up. You're saying
No,
that
that's-
Labradoodle is like never a
Dude,
made up
no,
breed?
yeah, that's not what I mean. I'm saying by that what I mean. We're just not giving like if we see a Chihuahua, we don't give it arbitrary the name. Oh, it's a beagle. We know it's a
Yeah.
Chihuahua because of the genetics.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. Because of the genetics.
So-
You just said it.
So you saying Clairstein cave dog? Yeah, that's an arbitrary name because it's not the name of the breed.
The Karstein cave dog is the
Yeah,
specimen and
it's
the breed.
just a
Are you happy?
dog. No, it's just a dog found in the Clarstein cave.
You didn't even know it existed 2 minutes ago. This is just your preliminary Google, and you.
Dude,
think
I
that you're
don't
now
need
an
to
expert.
know like every single freaking dog bone they found. But it
Yeah.
doesn't take a
Well,
genius
'cause
to
clearly
figure. It
it
doesn't take a
negates your
genius
entire
to figure
point.
out that's not the name of the breed.
Yeah, because clearly, if you were actually aware of every dog bone that was found, you would not hold the position that you do. Like the fact that you're
Dude,
not aware
that's
of
why
it is the whole
exactly.
reason why you're
That's
able to
exactly
make
why I
these
hold the
claims.
position I do because you can't find a single transitional.
No, I literally just showed you a transitional.
That's not a transitional, dude.
The genetic DNA is proof that it's a transitional beyond any shadow of a doubt.
Oh my god, dude! It's literally it's not a transitional. They can't
Okay,
even find
well, I'm
the.
gonna talk with Adam.
What's the
now.
breed?
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk with Adam now. If you
Oh
want
my
to stay
God.
in the room, you can. Just we're gonna be talking about.
Well,
the Cambrian
are you gonna at least admit and be honest, like Atheist Junior, that this isn't the name of a specific breed?
No, I
It's just
literally
a
just sent you
dog.
the name. I sent you the name. I mean, I don't understand why you can't.
That's
you can't
not the
take-
name of the breed.
It is.
It's just a
The
dog
Garcia cave
found,
dog, man. Like, why would you accept that?
because it's just found in the Christian cave. It's
Yeah,
that's
that's
not
the first. Okay, look, you understand, right? Like Neanderthals are named after a cave. Denisovans are named after Denisova cave because the first specimens found of those populations were found in those caves. So they named the whole breed or species, whatever you want to call them. They named them after that cave. That's how these things work. Karstein cave dogs were first found in Karstein cave. That's why they're called Karstein cave dogs.
Yeah, and they just don't live in the freaking cave, right? So these dogs are also found outside. So
Yes,
what?
obviously.
Yes. So what breed? So if we're just gonna say this is the breed called Karstein cave,
No, it's a breed called Karstein cave dog. Why do you leave out dog at the end? We're not talking about
No.
the cave.
Karstein, because when you say Karstein cave dog, that means just a dog found in the Karstein cave. It doesn't refer to a
No, dude,
a
no.
breed
When I
called
say
Karstein cave dog.
Bubblegum, when I say a bloodhound, right? I'm not
Yeah.
talking about a breed called a blood. Just because I'm talking about a bloodhound. Okay, the name of the breed is bloodhound. In this case, the name of the breed is Karstein cave dog.
No, dude, that's like
Yes.
saying that's no different than saying Canis familiaris. That's like no different than saying domestic dog. You're just giving me a category.
Yeah, you're asking for a category. That's what you're asking.
I'm not asking for a category. I'm asking for a specimen.
I gave you the specimen. There's multiple specimens in the study.
Yeah. The dog found in the cave is a specimen, but that is not that is not the name of the specimen. So if they
Dude,
found
you
another
are
dog,
wild, man. I mean, the fact
Yeah.
that you cannot even accept basic facts as presented to you in an
Dude,
actual study.
do you think I'm aware of the freaking weasel taxes you're employing? When I ask you for the name of the transitional, do you honestly think I'm asking for a category?
Yes.
I'm not
Breeds
asking
are
for
categories.
transition. The name of a transitional is not asking for a category.
No,
It's
it
asking
literally
for an
is. If you're
actual
that's what
specimen
you're
that
asking.
existed. I'm
No,
not asking for an abstract.
you're asking for the breed, and
No,
breeds are
I'm asking
categories.
for a noun. I'm asking for a noun, not an abstract.
Yeah, you realize categories are nouns, right?
Oh my god. Dude.
Like what you're asking for, you've been very clear on this. You want the breed
I'm
of the transitional, which
yes, an
is
actual
a
specimen.
category.
Dude, I'm not asking for an abstract. I'm asking for an actual specimen.
I given you the actual specimen, and you,
Yeah,
for
and
some reason, won't acknowledge it.
this
Look,
specimen
for
isn't.
everybody listening, for everyone that's joined, the study that we're referring to is Ancient European Dog Genomes Reveal Continuity Since the Early Neolithic from Bodegue, I don't know how to pronounce it at all, from 2017, right? That's the study. They literally go through different ancient dog specimens, right? These are real things that they're digging out of the ground, ancient dogs, and they're testing their DNA. And for some reason, Bubblegum keeps going around and around saying that either these specimens don't exist, or they're not transitionals, or they don't know what breed of dog they are, when literally all of the answers to all those questions are in the study and prove him wrong.
They literally do not. They say we don't have any transitionals.
They don't. Find it in the study. I dare you.
They do.
They really don't, man. And again, you have not prepared for this. You haven't read this study. I don't even think, even if you read the study, that you would understand it. But like, I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt here. But the things that you're saying are so patently ridiculous that like you cannot, you literally can't even acknowledge the fact that these are actual ancient specimens.
How do you share my screen? I'm trying to share my screen. Okay.
Oh, I think I can. Like, do I add it to the stream? Your shared screen?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Well, you figured out. I couldn't. There you go.
All right then. So, what he's talking about the cars? I can't pronounce that, dude. It's a dog-like creature from I can't pronounce that, Serbia, and found in the Currency Cave.
Why can't you read from the actual study? Why are you having to read from like?
Well, because
you're not even clicking on the Google result of like a news article.
Then when I clicked on it, I'm trying to like find it. That's the thing.
Can you pull up the study that I've been talking about? That would be beneficial.
Dude, well, we're talking about these dogs. It doesn't really matter. It's
the dogs are the genetic analysis of the dogs are in the study I want to bring up. I mean, can you bring that study up? If I tell you what to search, will you search it?
Here, found it. I can't pronounce that name. Colleagues described the remains of a dog-like creature from can't pronounce that.
It sounds very transitional, doesn't it?
Oh, a dog-like.
Yeah,
do you think
exactly
dog-like?
How they would describe a transitional form?
Wow, dog-like. Oh, that's a transitional. A dog-like is a transitional.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, dude.
Yeah, you just highlighted the transition that you're looking for.
Dude, I did it. It just says dog-like.
Yeah, the Karstein cave dog is a dog-like transition from a wolf to a dog.
Oh my god, that's like saying freaking Canis familiaris. It's like saying domestic dog. Well, the transition between a wolf and a dog is a dog or something dog-like. Do you honestly think that's what I'm asking for?
You're literally describing the transition, and you're not giving a logical explanation for why you're rejecting it as an example.
Because I'm asking for an actual specimen. The specific
that isn't a specimen, man. Why are you saying it's not a specimen?
First of all, it's not even a transitional specimen. Second of all, the best they can say is dog-like, so they don't know what type of breed it is. So I'm not sure they even genetically tested.
It was genetically tested. You refuse to pull up the study where they genetically tested. Why? Can't you just bring up the study?
Oh, there it is. Found it. Okay. Found it. But the new study, genetic analysis, suggests that this particular sample is an ancient sister. Did you get that? Sister lineage to modern dogs. That means it's not a transitional. Checkmate, Grayson, for the third time.
Okay, so the third time, I don't know what the first two were, but if we pull up the actual study, right, not a news article, we can find what the actual results were.
The news article is going to be based on the study.
I don't think so. Go to Ancient European Dog Genomes Reveal Continuity Since the Early Neolithic.
Do you think this news site is like some sort of a creation as PSYOP or something?
No, I think it's written by journalists, not scientists.
Nice excuse. Well, I'm out.
All right. Well, it's always a pleasure talking with you about dog evolution for the billionth time. All right, Adam, what's up? Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience.
No, no problem. That was
Yeah,
very
he's a
productive.
handful, that one.
Oh my God. No comment, I guess. I'll keep my mouth
Yeah,
shut.
I really need to learn how to share my own screen. I'm kind of, I need to get better at that so I can improve the quality of these live streams. I don't have to depend on other people sharing their screens. So
Yeah,
I'll get the hang of it.
I think you just go down to present. Is that what you
Yeah.
see? And then you choose a couple. There's a couple of settings on there you can choose.
Yeah, I see. I mean, that's what I was trying to do before, but it wouldn't give me permission to share it. If I share, yeah, I guess it's something about, I think I'm using Google Chrome and it's not happy about that. So I'm going to have to do some other kinds of experimentation on that. But so with the question of the phylum in the Cambrian explosion and why we see all of the phylum for like modern day animals arise either before, during, or like immediately after the Cambrian explosion, very close within that time frame, right? So I really think that this is just sort of a confusion that's brought about by like what a phylum is definitionally, right? Like, would you acknowledge that, okay, if we had a hypothetical situation, right, where we have a speciation event today and we have a totally new species like evolving rapidly just for the sake of this hypothetical, okay?
Sure, yeah.
And now this new species that has arisen is like totally like radically different from the species it came from, right? It's like not even recognizable. It's like so completely alien in form, like, and that would not be a new phylum, right? It would still be the same phylum as its ancestors were. Like, no matter how drastic of a transition that we get, it will never create a new phylum because definitionally of like what a phylum is.
Wait, that doesn't make sense though, because at some point new phyla did develop.
Yes, from the kingdoms, right? All the kingdoms split up into phylum. And once that happens, that's all the phylum you got. Like those phylums split up into, like classes and orders and all that stuff. But like the definition of a phylum precludes any new phylum from coming up, like definitionally.
Okay, maybe I just missed that, because that's the part that doesn't make any sense to me, because my impression is that what we're being told with sort of the old-fashioned version of evolution is you have natural selection and slow gradual change through in the environment and mutations and stuff, and that eventually leads to a species split, which eventually leads to like a bigger type of split over time, and those splits eventually get more and more extremely different from each other. You're saying it's basically opposite, where you start with the biggest splits at the beginning?
No, so the splits that occur, right, are only going to be widened over time. So when you have the original, like the splits for like the kingdoms, right, animals, plants, fungi, like the major splits in the kingdoms, originally when they were all part of the same population, those would have just been like subspecies, okay? And then you have a speciation, and now you have two different species that would eventually form like the common ancestors for the entire kingdoms, but they're still very similar to each other at that initial point. So like the split for the kingdoms would have been a species level split at first, but then as you have all of like the animal like lineage continue to diverge into the different phylums, like those animal phylums are getting farther away from the plant phylums, which are getting farther away from the fungal phylums. So over time, these like as new varieties continue to differentiate and speciation and branching continues to happen down and down the tree, right? Like the kingdoms get farther apart, the phylums get farther apart, the orders get farther apart, which all of those started out as just speciation events.
Okay, I don't think that's even what is being claimed, but how could something like a starfish become a new species of starfish that now looks like a scorpion? Those are like the types of changes we're talking about, right? Like it's the
Not
entire body.
necessarily. I mean,
Like
you're talking about like the rise of like arthropods versus the rise
I
of,
mean, arthropods are a phylum that originated in this time period.
Yeah, sure.
Brachiopod.
Slightly, probably a
Uh,
little bit before the Cambrian, you get the rise of arthropods. Sure. And then since then, all of the differentiation within arthropods is still within the same phylum. Okay, so like you get really like things within arthropods that are very different, right? You get like, but they're still all in the same phylum, and no matter how different they all get, they're still always going to be in the same phylum because like every speciation's event is still in the same genus, order, class, family, like phylum, kingdom, like all of the previous categories are still the same no matter what speciation you get. So like you're never going to get a new phylum because like the definition of phylums are coming from that point in the past, like of the Cambrian. Like if a differentiation happens outside of that time, it wouldn't be a new phylum.
what you're saying just doesn't make any sense, because like think of it in terms of humans. The homo is a genus, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
So the Homo genus is a new genus. It didn't stay whatever the ape that we evolved from. We didn't stay that genus. Eventually we changed significantly enough that we're now different enough to warrant a new name for something.
Yeah.
So
And so do you think that the Homo
genus.
genus would stay as a genus if new genus, like if
Like
new, I don't know what the plural of genus is, but if new ones are arising within
genera.
Homo, do you think that Homo would continue to be labeled as a genus, or would it start being labeled as like a class or a family or an order?
No, I think that I guess I don't understand your question.
Because you wouldn't have a genus within a genus, right? You only have one genus.
Yeah, I mean, one genus can split off into two, or it can become like a different one. But yeah, it doesn't. You can't have you don't have a genus within a genus.
Yeah, so these classifications of like genus, order, family, phylum,
Mhm.
kingdom, they're all like what defines them is like how differentiated they are in chronological history. Okay, so like you can't get like a new phylum forming today because you don't have any of the populations that initially formed like the phylums. Like everything is now within a phylum. So you don't get a split that now all of a sudden you're in a different phylum. Like that's not how evolution works. That's not how like maybe I need to provide a visual for this or something, but like to make the analogy for like an evolutionary tree, right? You have branches that separate into more branches. You never have a branch that separates into two trunks.
I just don't think that a tree analogy holds up, though, because we don't start with one thing that splits off. We start with like 40 things.
Well, we do start with one thing. I mean, that's like the rise of
For animals.
multicellularity.
For animals.
Yeah, we would start from one thing, the initial population that was formed the kingdom
Sponges or
Maya.
something.
Huh?
Sponges or something. I don't know what was the first.
Yeah, it might have been superficially similar to a sponge, but it would not have been classified as a sponge. But the like the initial population that diverged into all the phylums you're talking about was all very similar at one time and was like the initial animal population. And I just want to welcome Zach for joining. I believe, Zach, you are a biologist, correct?
I am, yeah. I'm currently a postdoc at the University of Michigan.
Good. Well, great to have you. This is a kind of a very relevant topic for you. I'm imagine. Have you been listening to any of the conversation so far?
Yeah, I was listening to the conversation about like sort of the difficulties here with trying to apply Linnaean taxonomy backwards in time, and I think that's what's causing the confusion, right? So we're talking about things changing from phyla to genera to family, like that sort of like perspective applied backwards in time is really, really strange, right? So Linnaean taxonomy only exists today, and it's this arbitrary thing where we draw these very, very arbitrary lines. They don't actually really even represent like true lineages in any sense of the word, right? Like when we say what a genus is, we're just defining a couple of things and we're going to group them into this genus. But what we really should be thinking about are like actual lineages, like genetic lineages, right? So like the origin of the arthropods was the origin of a series of new lineages. When we look backwards, we call that the origin of Arthropoda as a phylum, and we say that's when the phylum originated because that's when organisms first appeared with the characteristics that we now associate with the arthropods, right? But they were just genetic lineages. They didn't have like a category on their back that said I belong to the phylum Arthropoda now, right? Like it's something that we're arbitrarily applying backwards in time, but forwards in time it would have just been splitting lineages. Just as Grayson was saying, that they would have been exactly like their parents, slowly changing over time. Is that a little bit clearer about like this origin of phylum concept?
I get what you're saying in terms of the distinction between using clades and using like the classical categories, but it still doesn't really give an explanation of. I'm using classical terminology because this is the problem I have with clades. It's like calling all modern music a Gregorian chant. You can't talk about anything because you just treat everything as what it, you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, if ragtime turned into jazz, turned into blues, turned into rock and roll, and you just call it all ragtime, it's not a useful.
Yeah, but you understand those are discrete categories, whereas genetic lineages are not discrete categories. It's continuous. Right. So like there's never a point in time where you have the first arthropod. There's never a point in time where you had the first species of X. Right.
Okay, but in the fossil record, there sort of is, because there's a period of time where we don't see any arthropods in the fossil record. And then all of a sudden, in a relatively, brief period, we see every single phylum that exists of animals, like all at once.
No, definitely not all at once. And we're talking over tens of millions of years. And we actually have found lots of precursors to the arthropods in the Ediacaran. So it's not like they just all appeared at once.
Yeah,
but again, fossils don't represent genetic lineages as a continuity. Like we don't expect fossils to be continuous, right? Because the process of fossilization is not continuous.
And I think that this is a good point that you brought up, Zach, about like Linnaean taxonomic categorizations, because like Linnaeus came up with all of these, like, like phylum. Well, I think Haeckel might have come up with phylum, but they came up with all these designations of like kingdom, phylum, order, family before even evolution was discovered, much less genetics. So he's right in a lot of the way that we're categorizing these things is a little bit antiquated, right? These are 19th century or maybe 18th century categorizations. But I think that maybe it would be beneficial maybe to be talking about these things in terms of clades rather than like using Linnaean taxonomy, because I think that is kind of a source of your confusion. And then also I did yesterday, I gave you the name of one of these potential precursors, like Kimbrella from the Ediacaran. So have you gotten a chance to look into that at all?
I did real quick, but that is not a phylum.
Well, it's a member of a phylum.
Sure, yeah. It wasn't a new phylum though.
Okay,
and it's within the period of time that I'm talking about.
Do you understand the usefulness of using like terms like clades, especially when we're dealing with like past differentiating and speciation events? It's more like it's easier to conceptualize as clades, because these clades started out as just speciation events, and then as like you get clades within these clades, all of a sudden it's no longer a single species like the initial population. Now all of a sudden you have very diverged species within this like umbrella of sharing a common ancestor from the initial clade, that over time, like we're just going to call that a phylum, because what we have nowadays is so derived from there that like we designate the clades that came up within that time period as phylum. The clades that arose before are kingdoms. The clades that arose after are orders. Is this making more sense?
But specifically in reference to today's diversity, right? Like, it's not like they appeared and boom, that they represent phylum level diversity. It's that based on our understanding of biological diversity of, say, the arthropods in today's era, we look back and say, okay, in the Cambrian, this is the first creature that we see that has the characteristics we now call arthropod. So we say the phylum originated here, but that doesn't mean that individual is like the phylum level, right? That individual is a species. That's just, it's all relevant to where we're beginning to call things phyla.
I don't see, to me, it seems a lot more vague to speak of it in terms of clades, like my analogy of referring to some song that just came out today as a Gregorian chant. Like, it's not useful to refer to all modern music as a Gregorian chant. It's more useful to have genres and subgenres to, if we're going to talk about how different genres and subgenres originated, it's not very useful to speak of music as just everything came from, I can't remember the Greek, Pythagoras invented harmony, like, okay, it's all Pythagorean music. Like, it's more useful to break it into categories.
Okay, so like, to use your example with music, right? You're saying that, okay, we wouldn't want to call everything the same genre because like there are different genres today. Okay, that's a good point. But at the point in time when Gregorian chants were a new genre, right? Like you understand like why over time we wouldn't want to classify the genres of the past the same as the genres of the present, and we might come up with a different term to show, okay, well, all of the lineages that came from Gregorian chants are all this kind of music, as differentiated from the lineages of musical genres that did not come from Gregorian chants or were not influenced by them. So the two different groupings that we have now just listed, we might call those musical phylum.
Right, which I find more useful.
Okay, yeah, exactly. And so
right.
Today, right, you could come up with a new musical genre, but you could never come up with a new musical phylum according to how we've just defined it.
That's the part that I don't understand. Why though? Because okay, so like
Because because the phylum is defined by its lineages afterward.
Yeah.
So if you just have a new genre, you can't call that a phylum because it hasn't turned into any future lineages yet.
Oh my God. So, okay, so let me go back to like the original question. Why is some like the extreme difference between something like a starfish and a scorpion is a phylum, right? Like the body plan, like the symmetry of the body structure, the body plan. Why did all of those body plans for every animal show up on the scene in the fossil record in the same place and never again, you're saying because it can't ever, a new body plan can never form? Like, what about a new environment? What about
even if a new body plan formed, even if a new body plan formed today, it would not be a new phylum.
It could, if there was some weird sevenfold symmetry thing with like weird spears sticking out, yeah, it would be a new phylum.
But again, this goes back to the arbitrariness about this Linnaean taxonomy, is we're applying phylum in a non-phylogenetic way right now. When you say, oh, well, it acquires a new body plan, therefore that should make it a new phylum. No, what makes a phylum is your ancestry, right? So do you all the members, all the descendants share a single common ancestor? That's a grouping. That's a clade, and why Grayson is trying to use clade instead of the Linnaean taxonomy, because it's, again, the Linnaean taxonomy is super, super arbitrary when we're trying to apply it here. So like you have clades within clades within clades. You never can escape the ancestor of that clade, which is why you can't resurrect a higher taxonomic order from the clade you already belong to.
But of course you have, yes, you can, and you have to be able to do that, or else there would only ever be one phylum.
So can you tell me how? No, but that's a good point, because eventually you get all the way back to the eukaryotes, right? So like you go up above the arthropods, and all of animals are metazoans, and all metazoans are eukaryotes, and all eukaryotes belong to some beyond clade that includes all living things, right? So like it's still a hierarchy. Everything is still clustered within a successively larger hierarchy.
Right, but if we're talking about primate evolution, it's not useful to talk about that we're all fish or something. Like, it's not adding any clarification by keep going back to calling it clades.
Okay, but
it's
anything
muddying
that
it
could
and making it vaguer. It's more
anything
vague.
that can descend from something with a primate ancestor cannot have an ancestor deeper than the ancestor of primates and fish. So if we
Only
say primates, all primates and all fish are chordates, right? So that's the phylum they belong to. So there is nothing that no offspring can a primate ever have that is no longer a chordate, right? It will always be a chordate because its ancestor was a chordate. It's just like you will always be related to your grandparents, no matter how differentiated your specific line becomes. Your grandparents will always be part of it.
Right. I think that you guys keep trying to explain cladistics to me as if I don't understand the concept. I understand what cladistics is. I just think that it's mostly useless. I don't think that it's helpful in this situation. It doesn't matter.
We're not explaining cladistics.
We're fish.
No, we're not explaining cladistics. We're just explaining like genealogy. Like this is just literally relationships, right? So like you can't resurrect a new phyla if we're using phyla to mean genealogical relationships. So like because you can't escape the one that you're already in because that's your genealogy.
Well, of course you can though, because like you said, chordates, right? You don't think that the earliest chordates might have split off into other phyla? Like didn't?
But
like
they're still chordates.
No, they by definition you can't.
Well, I don't know. I've seen these like diagrams where a lot of the like a new phylum will split off, and then that will split off into multiple phyla.
Well, it'll split off into multiple clades within that phyla because all the clades that quote unquote split off have that one common ancestor.
Okay, we got to either talk about clades or talk about the classical categories because you're mixing the two up, so it's not coherent.
Well, you're mixing the two up. I'm trying to bring it back to.
I'm avoiding clades. I think clades is useless. There's no use in talking about clades right now. It's completely useless. It's just making it confusing.
Okay, so you are never going to what phylum you are a member of is dependent on what phylum your ancestors were a member of. So no matter what mutations your descendants receive, no matter how different they become, they will always be a part of the same phylum because they have not changed their ancestors.
That isn't true because the chordates had to come from a phylum that was not a chordate.
Yeah, and they're still a member of that. Like, well, okay, they didn't come from a phylum that they came from like a kingdom, and they're still a member of that same kingdom. Like,
no. At one point, there was like, okay, I don't know what they all are, but like jellyfish and sponges came before chordates in the fossil record, at least. So if chordates came from those same animals,
they didn't come from those same animals. Those animals branched off from metazoans before chordates did. Like they're more basal. They branched off sooner, but we did not come from cnidarians or poriferans, sponges or jellyfish. They had already branched off from the rest of the metazoans.
Do you know what chordates came from? Like what animal was there before chordates that chordates came from?
Like a pre-chordate?
Yeah.
There are urochordates and hemichordates.
It would be like a deuterostome, right? Like it would just kind of like look kind of superficially like a worm.
Deuterostomes are even deeper, but like urochordates and hemichordates, like the lancelet looks a lot like what you could imagine a very early chordate, in that they have a notochord. They kind of look like a little fish, but they don't have bones. They have gills, and they have a notochord that never forms into a spine. So that's a pretty early, like pre-chordate. Okay,
so at one point there was pre-chordates, a phylum, pre-chordates that eventually...
That's not a phylum, though. That's above the phylum level.
So you're saying there was a period of time where there were animals that could not, in a Linnaean sense, be classified as a phylum? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the phylum is a classification that's only applied to the past. There's like, it's not like, I mean, like I guess
we're still
species are members of phylum today, but they're defined that way because of their ancestry. Like, it's not like whenever these proto-chordates first differentiated, it's not like all of a sudden we would have defined that as a new phylum. Like we would have defined that as a new species if we were around at the time classifying these things.
That's the part that I don't understand how you could say that when the difference between a phylum, something like a starfish and a mollusk or something like a scorpion or something, the differences are so significant on a body plan symmetry level that is what is interesting about this dilemma is why do these significantly, fundamentally, extremely different body plans all sort of appear on the scene at around the same time and never again? Like, why didn't once dry land was a major deal, why didn't some new body plans develop out of that? Why is it just like there's this one period?
There were new body plans that
Tetrapods.
arrived. Tetrapods are a new body plan that was adapted for like land. There aren't that many tetrapods in the ocean today, unless they are like whales or something and went back into the sea.
Those are still just chordates, though, right?
Yeah, because every single stage is going to be in the same classification as its ancestor at every point in the evolutionary tree. Like when the chordates when the chordates first branched off, right? And you're saying, oh, look, there's a new phylum, the chordates. They're still just like metazoans, like their ancestors. They still belong to the same groups that their ancestors, like the basal animals, did. They haven't split off into anything different than their ancestors.
It's such a bizarre way of thinking, because I asked you this yesterday. There were single-celled organisms, right?
Yep.
You are a multicellular organism. You're not still a single-celled organism.
But I am still a eukaryote, just like the single-celled eukaryotes that were our ancestors.
But you're not a single-celled organism. You're not a retarded.
Yeah, the criteria for what determines if something is a eukaryote or not is not multicellularity. The criteria that check something off as a eukaryote apply equally to me as they did to all of my ancestors, like from the first eukaryotes.
So, but like a fish, for example, most people describe a fish as something that lives in the water, has fins, like has scales, has gills. Do you have those attributes?
Cladistically, in a sense that we're talking about cladistics, we are still fish. Right?
Yeah, but do you have scales? Are you green?
Okay, lots of people might look at a whale or a shark and they say, oh, those are fish because they look like fish.
But what shark is a fish?
Yeah, wait, what?
Sharks are fish.
Right. Well, they are, like, in a colloquial sense, you can point to different things as being fish or not fish. Like in a colloquial sense, like a dolphin is not a fish. And yet, cladistically, like we all came from like a clade of fish. So we're still fish. We still fit into the same category as our ancestors.
I know, but it's like we're talking past each other. I think you're missing my point. It's not like everything that everyone thinks of as a fish is not useful to call a human a fish if it brings to mind a green-scaled underwater breathing,
because the word fish was invented before we understood cladistics or genetics. Like the word fish is ancient and predates our understanding of these topics.
Yeah, it should just bring to mind phylogeny, right? It should just bring to mind ancestry. And when we say we're still a fish, we just mean we share like common ancestors with a fish, and that we actually nestle within like lobe fin fishes.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I could appreciate that, and that I can see in a conversation why that might be relevant. But in this conversation, it seems to be distracting from the point of how did these major differences get there kind of all at the similar time? Like Grayson, earlier you were saying, well, that's kind of like I think you understand the answer to this question, and you were kind of starting to explain it to me, but I just don't get it. Because you're saying like at first you're going to have one group and it kind of splits off, and it like the way you're explaining it started to make sense that it's like once it splits off enough, it can't split off more, but I don't see why it wouldn't be able to split off more.
Like imagine, like you're imagining this branching pattern in the tree, right? No matter how much the tree branches, no matter how many new branches are created, all of the branches have the same trunk, right? And no matter what pattern of branches arises, it's not like it's ever going to change what the trunk of the tree is.
That's not what we see, though, because we see it's not really like a tree. It's more like a bush. It's like a bush that grows back in on itself and becomes like the branches can sometimes come back together, like especially when you go really far back. Like
Well,
you have
we're talking about eukaryotes because we're talking about animals. We see it as a tree pattern, not like what you're describing.
that's what I've seen in textbooks, is especially when you go back that far, you have these combinations of things where it's like mitochondria and these algae and stuff. It's like it begins to reconnect back together into.
I
Like,
think that what you're referring to is endosymbiosis.
yeah, something
Um,
like that.
Yeah, but we're talking about for eukaryotes. So all that stuff has already happened. You have your first eukaryotes. There's no longer capable of horizontal gene transfer, or we haven't seen any endosymbiotic processes like that. Like what we're talking about with eukaryotes, with animals, the law of monophyly absolutely applies, and no matter how many branches are created, the same tree trunk is present on the tree. You're never going to have any branches that create a new tree trunk.
But what? Okay, if there's these little changes, these, you're saying little minor speciation, why would that make such a significant difference in the symmetry and the body plan and the entire like type of animal that it makes? Instead of like, I'm expecting to see little subtle changes. A starfish becomes a slightly different type of starfish, and then it's like a yellow starfish. Not that it goes from like a worm to like starfish and these weird,
So
like,
if you look at the kind of
centipede things.
specimens in the Ediacaran, right, you will see that some of them look pretty similar, but they have radically different body plans, right? Even if,
Right.
like, to a layperson looking at them, they would say, oh, those just look like different varieties of the same thing. They look very similar. But one has threefold symmetry, one has
Right.
radial symmetry,
Yeah,
one has stepwise symmetry. But superficially, they look very similar, exactly like what you're describing. But the differences in these like speciation events compound over time. Like that's the whole point of like clades within clades. Like
There's
the
no
differences are going to be
possible way
compounded
from
and become
speciation.
greater as generations go on.
Absolutely no possible way it was just from speciation and natural selection. It's absolutely impossible. There's not enough time. It would have taken fucking forever. Like these minor gradual changes could not have resulted in such drastic differences.
How do you know that? How do you know that there's not been enough time?
Well, I'm just saying from what I've read, it's saying that there's not, you can't get this.
Well,
from speciation.
I mean, I would argue no biologist would accept that. No biologist would say there's not been enough time, and that there's a time problem to evolution.
No biologist would say there's a time problem.
None. I'm sitting here telling you right now, as a biologist,
Okay.
None would say that.
Well, just because you're a biologist doesn't mean that you've read.
Then tell me one. Tell me a
everything.
biologist that says there's a time problem.
Well, I've seen, I'm not saying that I can cite a thing, but I've seen that the time problem come up where it's like, how can we explain this in this short of an amount of time?
Followed by the explanation, right? Like when you read these papers, if you keep reading, the explanation is then right after that. And very often it's that we actually do find a lot of these precursor forms, like, and we consistently find them more and more. And we also find that like molecular phylogenies consistently date the origin of a lot of these groups to deeper than the Cambrian.
So, oh, absolutely. Yeah. So that's an interesting point. So that is like getting deeper into what I'm talking about. But so it could just be something changed in the ocean or the planet or whatever was going on. And it just was a matter of the way that fossilization is occurring. Maybe that is the answer to this question.
I think it's probably a lot of that. And it's also a lot of that these early organisms were probably soft-bodied. Right. And soft-bodied organisms just don't fossilize very well.
Well,
right?
That's just not true, though, because in the Ediacaran, or however you say it, you have jellyfish fossils is like the characteristic fossil before the Cambrian explosion is the soft-bodied stuff.
No, I'm not saying they don't fossilize. I'm saying they don't fossilize well. So like we would not be getting the whole diversity of the origin of these body plans that you might be expecting when a lot of them originated as soft bodies. You're going to be having a lot more gaps than what you are seeing once you have, calcification in, the Cambrian.
I also just want to bring up the point that you're like kind of pointing to this, like, oh, why would we see all of these body plans arise shortly after multicellularity? Like, you understand, like, completely, like, just thinking about this logically, as soon as you get multicellular organisms, the next step would be you're going to have different kinds of body plans emerge. Like, just thinking about that logically, you would expect the body plans to come after the rise of multicellularity. And then what do we find in the fossil record? Exactly that.
Okay, so but you guys are saying two separate things. Is it that the Cambrian explosion really did happen, or is it an artifact of fossilization and it didn't really happen? There wasn't a diversification. If there was a diversification, it has to do with the first cases of complex life. Why did it suddenly stop? Why didn't it keep becoming more complex and more different?
It didn't stop. It is continually becoming more complex and different. That it literally is evolution.
No, the differences are becoming less. They're becoming minor. In a Linnaean sense, they're becoming less, they're becoming lower on the hierarchy, or higher on, I don't know if you would say lower or higher, but like the phylum level is the highest level you can get when it's still an animal. That type of distinction has never happened again since then. That's
because we no longer have a population of basal animals that are diverging. All right, they're done. They're extinct. Like the things we have now are the current species of life. Like if we were to run the clock forward for millions of years, like some of the species that we have today would diverge into different clades and would differentiate, and they would no longer be species. They would either like go extinct and they would become a different kind of Linnaean taxonomic classification than species.
I think that's the part that you get that I don't understand. Like I don't understand. Like to you, it's like self-evident, obviously, because it's going to do this thing. I just don't get the logic of what you're saying. Like I almost get it, but I just don't get what you're saying. Like it doesn't make any sense to me that if these are like, if you have things like what was the term that you used before where it can like God damn it, what was that term?
Endosymbiosis.
Yeah, is that the same as like symbiogenesis?
No, I think symbiogenesis would probably be the genesis of a symbiotic relationship, just parsing that from like the words. But like endosymbiosis is like not an evolutionary event. That's like where one organism kind of like it's like the example is like the like mitochondria were initially a single-celled organism that was kind of like, taken over by a larger one that became eukaryotes, and like mitochondrial like kind of became a part of that larger organism. And that's not really something that we see happening today very prevalently in eukaryotes. That's why like eukaryotes obey the law of monophyly, and why like you keep having branches within branches within branches, but it doesn't change any of the previous branching patterns.
I just want to jump in and say there are exceptions. There, like corals are a great exception where they actually take dinoflagellates into their shell.
And I'm aware also of like a certain kind of salamander where it, like I've at least seen speculation that it could be entosymbiosis happening in the process of like the algae is actually like the salamander is actually taking in parts of algae into their cells and like doing photosynthesis.
So like the common pond scum stentor will eat algae, and just by eating it, it will live in its cytoplasm and it will photosynthesize and it will like ingest the sugars from the algae in its side. It's not born with it, it's like it has to ingest it. But if it ingests it, it will live inside of it as an endosymbiont. So it is a thing that we do see happening. They're not as specialized of a relationship as the mitochondria is with the cell, but it's not like we just never observe endosymbiosis.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Largely, especially with like eukaryotes, like basically like in human evolution, I don't think that there's any cases where we have evidence for any endosymbiotic event in the evolution of humans from like from basically the Cambrian to now, at least to my knowledge.
But in principle, is there any reason why, say, humans or whatever we're talking about, you couldn't have, say, a new human is born and there was some rare genetic mutation where the, I don't know, gene regulatory network or whatever controls the body plan caused it to turn into this weird 7-fold spider, 4-headed spider thing? That would be a new body plan, right? Are you guys saying that can't even happen, or that would be just not like, actually, yeah, I'm curious.
Even if you had a new body plan, like a mutation that somehow caused a new body plan that somehow like was survivable, because most of these are just going to result in like insta death.
Sure, yeah.
But even if you did have one, it would still be the exact same phylum as its parents.
So Goldschmidt thought that this was actually how evolution happened, right? He proposed that the hopeful monsters, that he thought that you could get evolution in a single birth step by mutational process. And neo-Darwinism and the modern synthesis has largely rejected this, that you need to have gradual changes in populations, not single births. Don't change the phenotypes of populations.
Did you say modern synthesis or extended synthesis?
Modern synthesis. I think the extended synthesis is bunk, but that's just me.
Okay, I don't know that. Biology and all this is not my subject, so a lot of this is pretty new to me. So thanks for bearing with me on it. But yeah,
no, that's fair. I mean, I think you're asking really good questions. Like they're good questions, and I'm trying to explain them as best as I can. I feel like this is one of those things where we need to be like sitting in front of a whiteboard. And like drawing this out. And I feel like it would be easier to follow this.
Yeah. Because some of it, I just don't know in depth, like the basics of all this stuff to begin with. So it's kind of a complex question when this is not my subject. I don't know it in depth. So, but I'm kind of learning about some of these certain interesting, Evo, Devo, and gene regulatory network. I just hear people talking about it, looking up, reading about it, but I just know pieces here and there about it.
Okay, well, I think that was a pretty fruitful discussion, at least in making steps towards maybe a common understanding for phylum and the Cambrian explosion. So this is good to build off of in the future. But for now, I'm pretty tired actually. But I think I'm gonna shut down the stream here. But Zach, I really appreciate you coming on. So I always like your input, especially for like some of these concepts, right? I didn't have biology at any graduate level. So I always appreciate like when people can bring expertise and whenever I can learn new things. So I appreciate both of you guys for joining. And I even appreciate Bubblegum Gun for joining earlier for that riveting discussion on dog transitions.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks, Adam, for the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions, yeah.
Thanks, Grayson. It was awesome. Thanks. Nice to meet you too, Zach.
Yeah, cool. So I hope to see you guys for live streams in the future. So just a few quick plugs just at the end of this. So I'm going to be having a couple more debates in the next month and a half. I'm going to be debating Trock on the age of the Earth. I'm actually going to be debating Nephilim Free, which should be an interesting debate. He's another one of those creationists that's been along the block for a long time. And he'll never change, but I figure it should still be an interesting conversation nonetheless. So got a few things coming up on the docket. Adam, I just uploaded that video that from last night on Brett's channel. So I added in a cheeky little edit at the very end. That's pretty funny. I don't know if Brett will be mad or if he'll think it's funny. So I guess time will tell, but check out that video if you haven't yet. That's all I've really got to say. Thanks everyone for being a part of the stream, and consider subscribing for more.